I'm a bit late getting into the room, but I had another meeting that was quite tightly finished. Welcome to the Governance and Audit Committee of Wednesday, the 19th of July, 23. Before I go into the agenda, can I just mention that at the full council meeting on the 6th of July, the council noted the resignation of Phil Sharman, our co-opted member. The council expressed their appreciation and gratitude for Mr. Sharman for his time with the council's Governance and Audit Committee. I think it's appropriate for me at this time to also express my gratitude to Mr. Sharman for his contribution, his enthusiasm and his professionalism during the time he sat on this committee. And I'm sure members will join me in that view as well. I've also emailed personally Phil to express my thanks to him and to wish him the very best for his future business activities. I know he's got a lot on his plate, which is one of the reasons he decided to resign from the City and County of Swansea's Governance and Audit Committee. So I just wanted to put that on record. So thank you for allowing that. If we can now turn to the agenda and take apologies for absence, please.
Apologies from Councillors Jeff Jones, David Hopkins, and from Gordon Anderson.
Thank you. Any disclosures of interest, please? Councillor
Yes, Chair. Okay.
Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams first.
Yes, Chairman, if I may, in terms of the the annual report of school audit, Governor of Carlisle School and Croyce.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, same area. Appendix item number 5, the school audits report 22-23. I'm a governor of Pendra Harvard.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Yeah, same item again, Governor Dylan Thomas.
Were the hands up? No? Okay, thank you. If you can turn to the minutes of the meeting of the 14th of June, take them page by page for accuracy, please. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, and page 8. If there are no comments on accuracy, then can I have hands to?
I will move, Chairman.
Julie?
Sorry, Chair. On page 6, paragraph 9, it's the third paragraph in respect of disposal of electronic records within Food and Safety Division. Simon agreed to add that aspect of the audit to the review of application controls, CX system, in brackets, flare replacement, which is on this year's audit plan. So perhaps the minutes could be reflected to show that specific audit.
Thank you, Julie. You could make a note of that for the this amendment to the minute. With that reference in mind, can we have a show of hands other than that? Is accurate. Yeah, got 4 hands in the room, and I got hands on the screen as well. Okay, thank you. If we can now move on to, so I can take my breath as well, to the annual complaints report, and I understand Ness is going to present this report on behalf of Sarah Lackenby. So Ness, can I invite you to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is the 6-month update on complaints covering the period of the 1st of April to the 30th of September 2022. And recognising that the council doesn't always get everything right, we welcome complaints because they help us to learn from them and so and to improve the processes when we do get things wrong. Appendix A includes the key performance indicators, and they mirror the complaints policy, which was reviewed and signed off by the Ombudsman in 2021 as being in line with the Ombudsman's model policy. The report shows that corporate complaints, stage 1 complaints increased, slightly fewer stage 2 compared to the same period in the previous year. The stage 1 increase was largely due to housing repairs, trying to clear the backlog of works that was prevented during COVID, and also a smaller number around the Ironman triathlon last year. 27% of the stage 1s were justified, which is a broadly similar number to the previous year, 218 compared to 214 the previous year. And stage 2 justified were broadly the same, 12 compared to 11 in the previous year. In social services, in adults, there was an increase in stage 1 complaints, but largely this was due to one case, one complainant with multiple different complaints about the same issue. Also, there were delays in initial assessments. 33% were upheld, and that's broadly similar to the previous year. In child and family, there was an increase in stage 1 complaints by 22%, and in particular in looked after children, and an increase in the single points of contact. There was also an increase in justified complaints, but a review and analysis of those complaints did not identify any particular trends. In terms of stage 2 complaints, there were 8, which is similar to the previous year. 2 were by the corporate process and were not upheld. We use the corporate process for complaints not directly about care of individuals. All the quarterly submissions to the Ombudsman were submitted on time. The new IT system went live on the 1st of July and is going well so far, and we're monitoring progress but getting good feedback from officers on how that's working. And finally, in the report, the additional costs that are shown there relate specifically to social services investigations at stage 2, and the increase is due to the cost of the investigators and scarcity of investigators, which is a challenge for many councils and is a challenge which is being discussed at the All Wales Complaints Officers Group. So with that, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Ness. Before I open up for questions, can I just mention to the committee members that I've had a conversation with Ness about the format and content of this report. I think we need to have a little bit more information around the detail, and I cited Ness to another local authorities report, which I think will certainly enhance the information that we receive at this committee without going into any of the detail, which I'm aware is dealt with in other scrutiny forums within the council. So in that context, the next report we will have will look different. It will contain different information, and hoping you will see the benefit of that, because there will be it'll enable the officers to give us more assurance that we're currently receiving in this document. I've got a hands up from Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Question really in respect of Appendix A, where you're listing the KPIs effectively. What we have there are I assume the values of the KPIs, but we don't know what the targets were in respect to them, in respect to the individual items. Can we have those included in the report or have them sent to us so we can compare, in that sense, how we are doing compared with what we hope to be doing?
Yes, of course. And I should have said, we're waiting for the Ombudsman's letter, but we will be producing the whole annual report for the period 22-23 in the coming months. And so you should have that in the early autumn. And we'll make sure all of that information and the presentation, as Chair has already described, is enhanced as well with additional information.
And if I might ask as well, it'd be useful if we could see the trends in those KPIs in terms of performance as well, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick point. If it is going to be produced slightly differently next time, it might sound a bit minor, but I think it ought to just very briefly say the difference between stage 1 and stage 2 complaints, because it looks as though it ought to be obvious, but I wouldn't have thought it was myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. Is your hand meant to be up? Councillor Andrea Lewis, because you're not a member of the committee.
Yes, it is. The report sits with me with complaints. I thought it might be helpful to give some background.
Okay. Okay,
So thank you, Chair. So first of all, if I could just reference the increase in the housing repairs. As you'll see from the report, housing repairs received 129 stage 1 complaints compared with 86 in the previous period. This is obviously mostly increased demand, clearing the COVID backlog of internal repairs. Members will know we had difficulty accessing people's properties because we wanted to keep them safe. So we had a surge, an increase in demand during that time. And also the transition period from the old Orchard repairs system to the new Oracle field services. So just to put some context to this, you will be aware that we've spent over 2 million, spent over the housing repairs budget by £2 million last year, as we completed a large number of internal repairs that were carried over from COVID, as mentioned. And during the 6-month period, we completed in excess of 26,000 repairs. So as a percentage for the number of stage 1 complaints received, this only equates to 0.49% of the repairs that were completed. So appreciate the opportunity just to give some context to that. It sounds like, 33% sounds like a large increase. But when you look at the numbers of repairs that we dealt with, it's very, very small in terms of numbers.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Are there any other questions, David?
Hi, Ness. Just 2 or 3 points really. Just in regard to 2.1, you mentioned obviously the Ironman event. Can I assume that the majority of the complaints were around traffic management?
I'd have to go and look at get some more information on that to be able to share the detail with you.
Okay, it just seems to be well documented on various bits of social media and everything else about the traffic issue. So the other one was on again in the same section 2.1, just in regard to social services. Obviously you mentioned about the outcomes and everything else. I think you touched upon the lessons learned. What's the process within that directorate just to well, he disappeared.
Oh, sorry.
I thought I was having a bad effect then.
I was just moving my computer.
Just in regard to the process within the social services, how that's fed back in a form of debriefing or formal training within the staff?
Yes, thank you. So in social services, complaints are monitored on a monthly basis and through quality assurance meetings held both with adults and in children's services, and the information is then triangulated with other quality assurance information, for example, case audits. And so through that process, they can identify any actions that need to be taken to put in place lessons learned. And that's when I presented the report, I explained that there were no themes identified in the social services complaints, and so that was part of the kind of outcome of that process. There was nothing that would give rise to sort of systemic concerns about practice or otherwise, albeit capacity within services. So mitigating actions are also captured on the service risk register.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And just the last one for me, really, on 3.1. I think you touched upon this expenditure and the financial implication for social services. And I think you've touched upon an all Wales approach. So are they looking at an all Wales approach in regard to procuring independent investigators as opposed to each council doing its own thing?
I think they're looking at a range of options, and the Ombudsman is also part of those discussions, recognising the challenges that local authorities are having, and so being perhaps more sympathetic to the time that some of these investigations are taking, because we haven't necessarily been able to identify and secure investigators in a timely way.
Okay, thank you, Ness. Thank you.
Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Ness, thank you for the report. I'd like to take a more detailed look at the paragraph 2.1 on page 10, the fifth bullet point. I'd like to understand more about the 29 complaints relating to one case, and following on from David's point, have lessons been learnt from this, and have all of the issues been resolved in relation to this complaint, please?
Thank you, Julie. So there are often examples of individuals who submit numerous complaints, and this is an example of that. But in this particular case, it is now subject to court proceedings, and the council has instigated additional measures to manage interactions with the individual concerned. So given that it's subject to court proceedings, I'm afraid it wouldn't be appropriate to comment further on it in a public meeting.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? No further questions. Thank you for presenting that paper, Ness, and for taking the questions. And if you can liaise with Sarah Lackenby and pick up the comments that have been made by councillors and members of the committee, that would be helpful for the next time. Thank you very much. Our next report is agenda item 5, and that's the annual report of school audits 22-23, and that's Nick, is it? Yeah. And Kelly Small.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks, Chair. Kelly's here from Education Management, so if there's any questions after I present the report, then Kelly's here as well. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm presenting the annual report of school audits for the financial year 22-23, which is agenda item number 5 in the reports pack, covering pages 15 to 34. It provides a summary of the school audits and thematic reviews undertaken by us, and identifies some common issues found during those reviews. So this document is for information only. There's quite a lot to get through, so I'll try and get through it as quick as I can, and then happy to answer any questions at the end. So if I can direct members towards page 18 of the reports pack and point 1.5. So in 22-23, internal audit continued with thematic reviews for schools, providing assurance across the following topics. So testing covered the key risk areas of procurement, head teachers' remuneration, and compliance with HMRC requirements regarding the employment status of individuals in primary schools. Secondary and special schools were also included in both head teacher and business manager remuneration reviews. So 1.6, we're happy to report to committee that we successfully completed all planned thematic reviews across the primary schools that were scheduled to be included in our rolling programme. We also completed 2 planned thematic reviews for the secondary and special schools. And furthermore, the team also finalised individual reviews for 4 secondary schools during the year. 1.9, just to reiterate to the committee really that once the action plan has been agreed with the head teacher, a copy of the audit report and plan is forwarded to the chair of the school's governing body and head of the planning and resources for information. 1.10, in relation to our thematic reviews, all findings and recommendations have been reported directly to senior management within the education department for them to be aware of the issues encountered. These findings have also been communicated to the schools via the various forums available and will be followed up in due course. And where applicable, individual memos have also been issued to the schools, informing them of their specific outcomes. Section 2, summary of findings at the bottom of page 19. So 25 primary schools were included in the thematic reviews. All secondary and special schools, as I mentioned, were included in both the head teacher and business manager remuneration reviews. 2.4, it's pleasing to note that all thematic reviews undertaken where a report was issued achieved at least a substantial assurance rating. 2.5 of the 4 secondary schools audited in year 2 were awarded a high level of assurance, and 2 awarded a substantial level of assurance. 2.6, termly training continues to be offered to head teachers and other leadership team staff by the funding and information team. And another point just to include here is that it should also be noted that a new training course has been implemented for schools specifically on procurement. And this will be offered at least twice a year to capture any new leadership and office staff. Section 3, primary schools. So just a little bit of more context to the thematic reviews. So the first one was procurement. This was completed, and we looked at whether the correct procurement practices were being followed. And this involved detailed testing on both individual and cumulative expenditure over £10,000. A list of those schools will be shown in Appendix 1, and in Section B shows the findings for that review. 3.2, which is the thematic review on the employment status of individuals. So we look at the status of individuals engaged by the school. Again, findings are below in Section B. 3.3, the head teachers remuneration review for both primary and secondary. So we were looking there to see whether the head teachers were being paid correctly and in relation to their school pay groups, and reviewing any additional payments and whether they had been suitably approved. On to Section 4, secondary schools. Again, we conducted a thematic review for business managers remuneration. And you can see the findings underneath in Section A. 4.2, 4 secondary schools were visited. The assurance levels can be found in Appendix 2. A total of 35 recommendations were made, which represents an average of 9 recommendations per school. On to 4.5, we've got analysis. We've got a breakdown really of where the recommendations have been given and summarised in the table below. And you can see in 4.6 that 44% of our recommendations were attributed to procurement, expenditure and multi-pay cards. And 4.7 lists the main areas underneath. On to Section 6, developments and other work undertaken during the year. 6.3, so information and advice has been provided by internal audit to school forums on the areas such as inventory management and procurement training. And we've also highlighted the main issues during our routine school audits and any sort of thematic reviews that we've undertaken. 7, risk management is quite an important update for committee here, as I know this has been raised in a number of previous meetings. So during our annual risk management audit, inquiries were made with the Director of Education on how risks were being managed in schools and whether each school maintained their own risk register. So at the time we were advised that there was no requirement and there was different ways of managing those risks in schools with their own governance arrangements. So we did recommend that further consideration should be given to devising a standard process and introduced into individual schools. And point D, so a bit of an update here that education officers have met with Richard Rowlands, the corporate performance and risk manager, to establish whether our corporate risk registers could be possibly fitted into the schools, but that didn't seem to work. So myself and Simon have met and had further conversations with education management, and it was determined that a number of actions the schools and the education department already undertake actually do fall under the umbrella of risk, but they've not previously been captured in a specific risk report. So education officers are now working to capture those risks visibly on appropriate risk registers, and further developments are ongoing in that area. Section 8, quality measures. As members are aware, at the end of each audit, we issue the head teachers and management with a quality control questionnaire that allows them to comment on on the audit service being received. So pleased to report that all those surveys have been returned, and which is 100% return rate. And we can say that from the results that 100% were at least satisfied with the overall usefulness of the audit. So in conclusion, section 9 and 9.5 is again the opinion of the chief auditor that based on the work undertaken in year, the financial management systems within the schools subject to audit testing continue to provide a generally good level of assurance based on the reported results, subject to some instances of non-compliance as stated in the main body of the report. Okay, Chair, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nick, for going through that report in the level of detail that you have. Just an initial comment from me, really, and that's I'm really pleased to hear that last update on the school's risk management arrangements and the education officers who are now working to bridge the gap that was previously in the way the things were organised and risk was being declared. So I'm pleased to hear of that development, and hopefully you can test and return to check that and how that's embedded in a future piece of work when you're back into the schools. If I could request that as well, please. If I can open up to questions. Councillor Mike White, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I take you to page 18, Nick, in regards to the SLA? I think the reason why the schools are no longer want to sign up to service level agreements is because they don't feel they're getting value for the service that they pay in the SLA for. I know, for instance, in my school, to advertise posts, we've got to go through the translation services, and they find this very, very difficult. And also to try to get some support then when putting an advert together with trying to get support from our HR. So, you know, I know there might be some sort of small areas, but I think it's important that when, you know, the process has to be done properly, that we also get the support from the appropriate departments, and we get what we're actually paying for the schools under the SLAs. Can I take you then to the issue of Appendix 3 within primaries of the issue around procurement? It's encouraging to see now that obviously there's going to be take up of the procurement process, because as you know, this was a regular item on our agenda, where we were finding, and when we was getting audit reports, that the main issues or concerns was flagged up within the audit when it been carried out was the issue around procurement. There's obviously there are still sort of one or two areas there where the staff seem to be getting the grasp of the process. But that's sort of just a general point, really, that we need to perhaps keep a close eye on the schools coming forward to take up this training. And obviously for training, obviously got a subcommittee with all around this area within the schools building project committee. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Mike. And we've done a lot of work ourselves and with Kelly Small about formulating a procurement guide for schools. And I think I mentioned in the report that extra training sessions have been put on now for schools, you know, to go through those areas. So it still is something that we pick up quite regularly during our reviews. But you know, we have put extra effort into hold these training sessions, and you know, any queries, questions, we aim to you know, to answer pretty quickly.
What about in relation to the SLAs, Nick?
Kelly's here, and she might be able to give you a bit more information on that.
Yeah, do you want me to jump in, Nick?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Kelly.
Yeah, so we do review the SLAs every year with the SLA managers to make sure they're providing what the schools want, and that, you know, it's at a sort of a reasonable cost, etc. So I will take your point back on that for that particular SLA. I mean, there is a comments and complaints process for schools as well on the SLAs. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. It's on our StaffNet process. So if any schools do have individual concerns, they can put that through and it'll go through to the SLA manager. But yeah, you know, totally appreciate if schools are paying for a service, they want to receive the service that they're paying for. So we can definitely feed all that back.
Thank you, Kelly. Is
Thank
that
you,
okay,
Kelly.
Mike?
Yes, thank you, Chair. But you know, we know that the school have got an avenue where they can go through, you know, for some answers to their questions.
Thank you, Mike. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on Councillor White's comments about procurement, despite strong governance in this respect, with the schools bulletin, findings being reported to the Director of Education and the Director of Finance, Section 151 officer, and to the individual schools, it does seem that the message isn't necessarily getting through. Hopefully the training will help in that respect. But is it something that we could ask the Director of Education to address when they next bring a report to this committee?
Ness, do you want to come
That's
in
a
on that
question
one?
for the Chair.
Yeah, Ness, do you want to come in on that one?
I was actually going to come in on the previous point, actually, with regard to the SLA. So if I could just touch on that first, just to recognise, Mike, that we know that there have been real challenges within HR and the service centre on the recruitment front, particularly around translation. And Rachel Davis, the head of service there, has been working with the team to put in some improvements to try and shorten the lead time. And so hopefully schools will be seeing that benefit. But as Kelly has already said, if you do have schools do have particular concerns, they should just go through to the manager, who will hopefully be able to respond to those. But it is an issue that we were aware of. Thank you. And on the second point, Julie, sorry, the question was whether or not the education director could deal with that issue. I believe that on the next audit committee agenda in September, the director is down to come and present a report, so we could ask her to include an update in there.
Yes,
Would be
please.
great. Thank you.
Yes, please. If you can do that, Ness, that would be
Yeah.
helpful. Sam, councillors.
Oh, sorry, I haven't finished, Paula. And I was
Sorry.
going to ask Nick a subsidiary question in relation to procurement. There is a theme emerging on findings that are repeat findings. So is it possible to provide the committee with a report of repeat findings so that we get a feel of how long individual findings are outstanding and how many there are throughout the council, please?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Julie. Just to go back to the procurement and the expenditure and so on. Yeah, we do pick up a lot of findings because it's quite a large part of our testing. It encompasses, as I said, procurement, expenditure and multi-pay cards. So we're probably always going to get recommendations in this area, which may, you know, be the main bulk of our work, because when we do go out to schools, it's a large part of our testing. So just to put some context on there. Repeat findings, do you mean just for schools or in general? Sorry, Julie.
In general, it would be quite useful because we are getting a number of reports to the committee which include repeat findings that haven't been actioned by the service. So I think it would be worth us understanding the extent of the issue and whether we can do anything to support you in that respect.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. We do report if they are repeated recommendations, as you're aware, when we put the action plans together. But I'll speak to Simon and see if we can get something together. You know, whether we can do that or not. But we'll certainly have the discussion.
Okay, and I do have another couple of questions, Chair, if that's okay, before we move on. Page 24, thank you for the update in terms of risk management, which the Chair has already referenced. Can I check, you've listed the scope of the audits this year in paragraph 1.3. You don't include risk management in that. So have you done any work in terms of looking at the effectiveness or adequacy of risk management in the individual schools?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. No, I haven't included it in that because obviously we haven't done any physical testing there at the minute. It's early discussions with education management and the likes of Richard and so on. So it is ongoing. And again, possibly Kelly may be able to give you a little bit more of an update on where we are, if there's any further developments since I've written a report. But at the minute, we haven't physically gone out to schools to test anything because there's nothing there for us to test at the minute. But maybe Kelly, you could update.
So, sorry, can I pick up on that before Kelly comes in? You do mention further on that schools do perform quite a lot of risk assessments in relation to school trips and health and safety. So risk management, I believe, is operating within schools, and I think it's of more importance to audit it before there is a standard system when schools are allowed to devise their own systems than perhaps when a system comes in that the centre is driving. So are you able to include that on this current year's audit scope, please?
Can I come in here? Can I come in, please, Nick? I think this is a question for the Chief Auditor, Julie. I think the comments are valid. I think we need to see exactly what's operating now, because what's operating now may help the implementation of what's going to be introduced. But I think in all fairness, I think that's for the Chief Auditor to make the decisions around, not so much Nick, although Nick I know is involved in those discussions. So can we ask Simon to come back for the next meeting with some detail around what he's intending to do and how you're going to dovetail into the work that's being conducted as we speak with the education officers? Is that a way forward?
Yeah, of course, Chair. And just to reply to Julie, there probably are elements of risk that we do touch on, when we audit schools, but again, it's not maybe officially under the risk management, bracket as such. So, yeah, you're right. You probably do touch on it with insurances and types of things that we do look at health and safety within schools. But again, it's not, under that umbrella then, if you like, of risk management. There's a separate section within our audit scope. So yeah, I mean, I can pass you on to Kelly if there's any further developments in that area.
Yes, so after we met, we have had a look, and I think there is a lot of risk management that goes on in schools. I think it's just that we haven't captured it. So as you said, there's a lot of risk assessments that are undertaken for things like, trips under COVID, that schools are used to doing risk assessments for many things during the course of the usual day. That we do have, in fact, I've just come out of that meeting to join us here. We have a meeting every month that we call school issues, and we're actually thinking we should probably call it schools risks and issues, because that's what we capture every month. And there are officers across the board, not just in education, but we've got sort of HR in there, legal, health and safety, and we cover each and every individual school and pick up any issues and risks that are being identified in the schools and what support we can give to them, and that's all logged and things as well. So I think there's a lot going on already, just not necessarily captured anywhere together. So I think that's what we're trying to do, and make sure whether there is a communication channel, if schools themselves are identifying any particular risks, that they can come through to us as well, and we can support them on that as well. So yeah, there's work going on, but hopefully by the next time, if Nick's going to give a feedback report, we can give you some more detail on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sam Pritchard, apologies for the delay in coming back to you, Sam.
No, that's no problem at all, Chair. I'm just glad to be here. I'll be very brief, Chair. Just with the difficulties of technology. Apologies if I've given anyone vertigo jumping in and out from this meeting, but yeah, there's been some sort of technical issues. But I've declared a written interest, but I had issues in terms of declaring a verbal interest. So just to note that I am declaring an interest in item agenda 5 as a governor of Bishop Vaughan School. And hopefully I'll be able to remain now for the duration of the meeting. But apologies if you see me flashing up and going back. But technology doesn't always work the way we want it to.
Okay, thank you, Sam. David Roberts.
Thanks, Chair. Just one for Nick, really. Just a quick footnote on 6.7. Is the aim in the future to see a risk register in each school, or are we looking at a county-wide educational risk register shared by all the schools, really? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Again, it's under discussions with education management, really, and you know, we again, Kelly may be more placed, better placed to answer this, but I think we did look at possibly maybe trying to adopt what the authority does and with individual risk registers for each school, and that's certainly been discussed. But it's operationally, it's whether we you know, it can fit with each of the, you know, the sort of 75 plus schools.
Yeah, sure,
Again,
sure.
Kelly, is that we did discuss that, and I'm not sure if it fitted.
Yes. So we were looking at potentially if there are common themes or risks across all schools in particular, that we can capture those on our corporate risk register. So, for example, you know, if you're looking at things like you know, budget pressures or financial ability, you know, to sort of set a balanced budget, you know, that could become a theme that's common across schools as budgets get tighter. So we could capture that as a risk and put mitigation measures in then. For all schools on that basis. That's something we have been looking at. You're right, Nick.
Oh, thank you both. Thanks for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Are there any other? Councillor Mike White?
Yes, Chair. Just a thought. As the school's got to adopt a lot of policies, would it be possible as a county could put a risk register policy forward for schools to look at to see if we can look at adopting such a policy, and then plus there could be sort of linked into certain subgroups of the school governing body to pick up. Just a thought.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, possibly. Again, it's need discussions with Kelly and her team about how we go about that. But if it's you know, a worthwhile exercise, then yeah, I'm sure we can do that.
Okay, thank you for that. I've just got just two questions, Nick. I don't know if you'll be able to respond. It's with regards to paragraph 3.2 on page 21. You've undertaken work around thematic review of the IR 35, and you raise a number of findings under 6 bullet points. What's the risk exposure to the council with regards to these 6 areas that you've raised concern over?
Again, it's an area that we were asked to look at, you know, by Kelly and the team, and I think you know, there's new rules that have come in. Again, probably Kelly be a little bit better placed to answer this, but there's new rules that have come in around tax and the employment of individuals at schools, and recording that type of employment and exactly how many hours they're working and what service they're providing to the schools. So it's certainly something that was emerging when we were auditing schools, and we discussed the area with Kelly, and we built that into our audit program to you know, to look at these, to make sure they had these IR 35s in place. Kelly, is that that's about the gist of it?
Yeah, in fact, this is a good example of an area of risk that we did identify across schools. So with the IR 35, for those that don't know, it's a check that can be undertaken online under the HMRC. So if a school is employing an individual and not employing that individual through payroll, then it's a check to make sure that the correct sort of tax and everything is being applied to that contract. It's a duty on the employer, not the person who's being employed, to make this assessment of whether they're you know, an employee or self-employed. So we've been giving training to schools on that. So it is just to cover the schools, really, because if there were you know, any sort of cases brought forward by HMRC, we need to assure ourselves then that we've done those checks and made sure that we are paying people correctly.
So the liabilities with the employer then?
with the employer if they haven't done the
Yeah.
check. Yeah.
So there is a considerable risk if there's a
And
breakdown in.
yes, and a financial risk as well, because there can be fines levied.
Okay, I think we need to follow that up quite quickly, Nick, then with a second audit review. As soon as you can plan one, or whether that's done through the corporate team, but the HMRC are quite rigid with things of that nature, and they do fine heavily. And the 6 areas you've identified there are quite concerning.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I mean, as Kelly said, it's been brought to our attention over the last year or so that this area needed to be looked at. It's a new area, yeah, happy to I'll have a discussion with Simon whether we can pick that up this financial year. I'm not sure, but we'll certainly discuss it and see if we can, if not undertake a full audit, possibly just revisit those areas. Or I know Kelly has introduced some further training for the schools for the IR35s. I think it's online, Kelly, that is available to all the clerks and head teachers. So it has been advertised in bulletins, so schools are aware. And of course, we've done our review as well, so all schools will be aware that we are looking at this area.
Okay. Nes, can we request that when the Director of Education comes to the next meeting, as well as the non-compliance with procurement issues, if he can also, or she can also include the IR35 position as well?
Yes, that's fine. Sorry, Chair, I've turned my camera off because I was having internet issues. But yes, we can certainly do that. I'm aware that there have been some changes. And there was a plan to repeal IR35, but I think that was then wrote back on. So we'll get the current position on the legalities of that, as well as provide an update as to what's happening in respect to that in schools.
Okay, thank you, Nes. If there are no other questions, can I thank you, Nick and Kelly, for presenting the report and for the, sorry? Councillor Leslie Walton, sorry, Leslie.
Yeah, you slightly stole my thunder, because I thought I do want to thank the officers for a pretty thorough report, and also bothering to come here and be bombarded by quite a lot of questions, which I'm very pleased how well you've answered and responded to, and the fact that you've taken all the points and you're going to follow them back. So I'd just like to thank you both for that. Thank you.
Totally
Thank you,
agree
Leslie.
with that. Totally agree with that. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, if we can move on then to the next report, agenda item 6, and that's the fraud function annual report. And Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Jonathan.
Afternoon all. I'll go through the fraud function internal report for 22-23, and then I'll present the plan for 23-4. On your agenda items, number 6, 7, pages 35 to 78. I won't go through the report in graphic details. I think the report is what it is. I'll just go through what I think the salient points of the report. I'll talk about the plan for next year, and then I'll just take any questions that you may have. I think the big change in the team in the year was the staff structure. As previously put in the plan for 22-23, Ben had identified that he wanted to bring in 2 further investigators. He also identified that he wanted to ring fence the 2 existing investigators and appoint one of them as the fraud manager. That happened in July, but then that manager gave notice 2 weeks later and left in September. The 2 new investigators were appointed in the autumn, but due to having to give notice in their own positions, they didn't start till January. We've been quite fortunate as far as I'm concerned. We've taken on Mrs. Nicola Parry. She's come from the Department of Work and Pensions. She was an existing benefit fraud investigator with them, having been there 8 years. Previously, she'd worked for the City and County of Swansea in a similar role in housing benefits. The other member of staff we've taken on is Mr. Ian Jones. He's come from Carmarthenshire, and he was the council tax reduction investigator in Carmarthen. So 2 very good members of staff we've taken on, and I've got no doubt of how well they will do going forward. In terms of the caseload for the financial year, that dropped slightly, but it's still quite a big increase from pre-COVID days, which we still tried to manage. The request for information from third-party organisations has grown 10% on the year. But if I'm honest, I've got no real concerns about that. I think it's something we can easily absorb, especially with the extra resources. And I wouldn't want to lose that, because I think it just brings so much in developing those relationships with the third-party bodies. And it does provide areas where we can see things are wrong with the council, where perhaps our collars and cuffs don't match, and we can put things right. And it does bring further investigations to us. So going on to the joint working resumed properly in 22-23, and we have started using that as business as usual. Obviously, with the relationships the two new members of staff have got with their counterparts in the Department of Work and Pensions, that should be enhanced greatly. And as you can see from the overpayments that have been realised through the year, they've increased over £80,000 within the year. And I would envisage, I will go out on a limb and say that should increase much further in this current financial year going forward, with the two new staff being on board. The National Fraud Initiative was concluded in November 22. There are 4 key areas which Swansea raised savings in, within the areas of Blue Badge, waiting list benefits and pensions. The Auditor General for Wales released his report in December, where he identified £6.5 million in savings across 7 areas. I put that into context with our working, and he identified 2.6 million within council tax single persons discount. It's not something we did. We had 20,000 matches, which was far too onerous. By the time we got those matches, and by the time we could even consider those matches, the data was out of date. The manager of the revenue section already employed a third-party company called Data Tank, and it was decided that we wouldn't undertake those matches, as it would just be too onerous to do so. And we already had assurances in place with the third-party contractor. Just to give you an instance as well, when you look at the Blue Badge figure in paragraph 527, our figure is particularly good. What I would say, that's all notional income, where the government's cabinet office put a notional figure of £575 against any Blue Badge we cancel within the period. Similarly, with waiting lists, it's exactly the same. They put a notional figure on that. Obviously, I think you can straight away identify between the Auditor General for Wales report and our figures that there could be a concern within waiting lists. Why is our figure so low in comparison? I don't know. I hedge my bets that it's because of all the positive work that have been done by Housing Options over the years in reducing that, whereas maybe other authorities haven't. Either way, I need to investigate that. I need to give Audit Committee assurance that that has been done properly. So for the current National Fraud Initiative, which has already started, corporate fraud will be undertaking all housing waiting list matches. Just to go on to some things, there were 19 referrals received and investigated within the year regarding internal investigations. Of those 19, only 2 cases resulted in affirmative action, where 2 members of staff resigned during the investigation process. I think that's got to be pleasing when we consider we employ 11,000 people in the authority, that there's so few investigations that have been done internally. Most of the investigations we received, we just found there was either no case to answer, or we felt it was a management issue or a disciplinary issue, which we passed back to the client department. So in review, out of the 8 planned outcomes on the plan for 22-23, 7 were completed. The only one that wasn't completed was the proposed matching exercise we had proposed to do with the NFI SPD work, but as I've outlined already, it was just going to be too onerous and just not feasible to do that exercise. So going on to the plan going forward, I think we have to look at what's important to the fraud function, whether we are going on the right tracks. I think my way of looking at it is what should be important to the council is what funds the council, and the council is funded by the revenue support grants, non-domestic rates, and council tax. So I think council tax is the big important thing that we have to ensure going forward. So we will continue to prioritise council tax reduction. and look at how we can affect the council tax base in terms of single persons discount and exemptions, etc. So with that in mind, council tax are undertaking a new data tank exercise. They're currently undertaking it now, which will look at single persons discounts. So we are going to actively get involved with any cases where data tank believe that the match is realistic and have not affected the council tax account. So we're going to double check and give further assurances on those cases. What we're going to also do is we're going to look at all the data tank cases where it's been identified that there may be an issue with council tax reduction, with single persons discount, where there's council tax reduction in payment as well, to see if both things are affected, not just the one. So we're going to get involved with that on a proactive way. The next area, which I think is going to be important, is we have got staff who are looking already to clear our backlog in housing cases, which we built up during the COVID period, which we've never got on. But they've started doing that now. And with that will enhance getting back out in the community, meeting all the housing officers. And that'll just bring in extra work, because once you meet one housing officer, they'll say, well, I've got this problem with another case which you don't know about. Can you help me with that case? So that's going to enhance looking at sublettings and non-residency. And obviously, when I talked about the work with housing options we're going to do in utilising the waiting lists, that'll bring us back into line with housing options, and obviously give us the public face with them again, where we'd be looking at false applications from the outset. We're also going to do a proactive drive in terms of housing, where it's been quite relative in my world that various councils are having problems with certain companies who operate short-term serviced accommodation lettings, particularly in London, where, you know, anybody who's ever tried to book accommodation in London, if you can book a council flat and pay £100 a night for it, you know, it's a win-win situation. So there's a lot of news about that at the moment. So with that in mind, we're going to do a proactive exercise looking at short-term accommodation in housing stock, in council housing stock, within being used as possible holiday lets. What we'll see, I don't know, but if we don't look, we won't know. So that will be that. And the other thing that we need to consider this year is looking at our data systems, investigation systems and management system to ensure they're fit for purpose. It's something I've been looking to do for a while, but it's been put on hold with the council's ECM SharePoint project. But once that's in place, I need to then consider, have the management systems we've got in place in producing statistics to you, and making sure that our case files are appropriate. Are they in place? So that'll be something I'll be looking at this year. If SharePoint and ECM is not the answer, then I'll have to look at other internal solutions and external solutions. So that's basically a rough idea of where we've been and where we're going. I'm open to any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. If we can take agenda item 6 first, then any questions from members? Councillor Mike White.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan, for a very comprehensive report. Just a quick query, really. You guys obviously you got in 5.5 in employee investigation. We kind of now if we obviously in some areas of service we got to bring agency staff for holiday comes and things like that, and also contractors working on behalf. Is any information given out to those companies, advising them that the council operates a zero tolerance of fraud?
I'm of the opinion, I don't know, I won't lie to you, Mike, I don't know the answer, Councillor White, but I know this was raised last year at Audit Committee and an answer was provided last year. If you can leave it with me, Councillor White, I will come back to you with a comprehensive answer on that. But I don't know off the top of my head, and I don't want to provide you with any information which I don't know about.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Jonathan, for the report that you've just done, and very encouraging. Sorry, this is really about 7, but very encouraging to hear that you're going to be able to be more proactive, because I know that's something that you.
I thought you'd like that, Councillor Walton.
Yeah, so good news on that score. One thing that I wanted to pick up on was about tackling housing fraud, in particular succession claims. Something I wondered, and you might not be able to answer this, and by all means look into it. I just wondered if one of these issues stems from the fact that when somebody becomes a tenant, they're probably not thinking very much about what might happen if they died and their partner wasn't actually listed on the tenancy. And I'm wondering if the when tenants are given an offer, they're advised, make sure that you've got something in place to say that a succession, that a properly legal succession is acceptable. Well, I mean, that it might only be very few numbers, but I mean, anyway, yes, sorry, carry on.
No, the question's valid, basically. Look, this is a huge problem, especially around in England. But we've got to remember, with regards to council housing in Swansea, I don't think we see the levels of fraud or the types of fraud, the systematic frauds that you see in many of the London boroughs and in England, because we've just got rid of the right to buy system. We've taken the carrot away. This is why people will set out from the start and have false tenancies. With regards to succession, Councillor Walton, I don't know what they're advised by housing options. I can certainly find that out, and I can certainly find that out. We get to memory. We had one case last year, which was identified that it was a problem of that nature. But I don't know what they're advised. But I can certainly find out and see what's on their packs that they give their new tenants on regards of succession. But I don't know is the answer, because that would be a housing options thing in their process.
Okay, if you can find out, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Mike Lewis, you had your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
It was Leslie actually cut across what I was going to say, or very similar to what I was going to say. So no, I'm okay at the moment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Jonathan, can I just go back to the staffing structure? Despite the deletion of one post, has the number of posts increased over last year?
Sorry, that obviously hasn't come out. Yes, it's gone up. So we went from two.
Oh.
There were two of us from the start. It was me and Jeff. Jeff's obviously gone. I'm here, and we take on Nicola and Ian. So Ben had wanted to take the number of posts up to 4, but obviously when the perfect storm happened in the autumn, the cost of living crisis and the funding problems and everything, he's had to sit back and say, no, hang on. Look, am I happy? Yeah, we've gone from 2 to 3. You know, I don't think we can ask for more than that. So we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go with 3. There was an aspiration from Ben to take it to 4 at one point. Let's see how we get on with 3 at the moment and see how the results go.
Okay, but when the decision was made in terms of deleting the post, whether it's temporary or permanent, couldn't the argument be made that these fraud posts are self-financing? Well, because if you delete a post, you are removing the opportunity for overpayment and fraud recoveries.
I'd be guarded the way I answer that. When you say that the posts are self-financing, when I talk to a lot of my colleagues, they promote themselves as self-financing, but they promote themselves on notional income. If you were to turn around to me and say, oh, right, if you want an extra fraud officer, it's going to cost £50,000 a year, but I want you to come to me with £50,000 notes and put it on the desk, I can't do that, because all I'm doing is raising overpayments. I'm identifying fraud. Whether that gets recovered or not is another thing. And I would say something further. I wasn't party to Ben's decision and discussions about what he was going to do with the number of posts in his fraud team, and I wouldn't even consider that's a way above my pay scale to be discussing that with Ben.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just ask another quick question.
Of course.
On tables 1 to 3, on pages 36 and 7, for the cases closed status, would it be possible to include in future fraud reports the reasons for closure? For example, whether the case has been proven or not, as I'm having difficulty understanding the outcomes of the investigations.
What I will try to do is I will try to make some sense of that table. better sense for you so that it's a more practical table. What it will show, I don't know, but I will try. I will take it aboard and I will try to give you some, in future, something. You're asking me for something. This is what I go back to. This is why I go back to, I need to look at the management structure, the management report structure I got at the moment, and the management I got. If I can do it, I will do it, but I got no idea how to do it. And I'm sure you don't want me sitting down with a pen and paper, opening up 400 files and writing down this one and then trying to, you don't want that. But if I can find a way of doing it, if I got the evidence there, I'll give it to you. See how we go. That's all I can promise you, Julie.
Thank you, Jonathan. On that point, I think it's valid that we're asking that question, because I'm looking at table 3. You've got 328 cases closed, 1 to be evaluated, and 65 under investigation. That's quite a large volume, even you've got 3 people now. So, you know, it is important that you get your management system and your systems of capturing this information under your belt, really, Jonathan, and
Well,
then you'll be able to give us the information.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, because 65, you're already saying 65 is a large amount of cases to deal with 3 people. Don't forget, last year, that figure's gone down from when there was only 2 of us this time last year. So I agree with you completely. What's there? Why we got so many cases? Are they being progressed in a timely manner? These are all the things I've got to start asking. And I've got to get a management system in line, which allows me to do that. But I've got to find a way of doing it. If it's not a management system, I've just got to find a way of doing it. And like Julie said, it's imperative that I come back, and the number of cases we dealt with, 328, that means nothing to you at this moment. And I appreciate what I take on board completely what Julie is saying. I've got to break that down and give some sort of idea.
Are we networking with other local authorities, see what systems they have?
There's very few in Wales that are there. The Powys are probably, Powys and Cardiff are probably the 2 authorities that have corporate fraud teams. A lot of them, like Carmarthen, like where Ian Jones has come from, they just deal with CTR. They don't deal with corporate fraud as a whole, so they won't deal with anything other than council tax reduction. So it's difficult to sort of benchmark yourself with them, what they're doing, because everybody will have their sort of individual ways of looking at things. I deliver a project which has been formulated by Ben and Simon over the years. Other chief auditors and other chief finance officers may want different priorities put on. But yes, in terms of management systems, yes, I'm aware that there's things out there. Whether they would be fit for purpose, whether we can afford them in this current climate, is another question that has to be answered. But before I can get to that point, I need to have a look at what the ECM SharePoint project is going to deliver to me. Is there something in there which is better than me using an Excel spreadsheet?
I mean, you know, Dave Roberts, the NHS background, I've got an NHS background, and there's certainly bespoke systems for capturing and investigating counter fraud in the NHS. And I'm just wondering, you know, what avenues there are to explore.
I have no doubt there are multiple systems out there. There are probably multiple systems. There should be multiple systems within the authority already, because I'm not the only investigation service. There's trading standards, there's environmental health, there's housing, there's all these people. So there's going to be management systems out there. It's going to come down to, does it take me anywhere any further than where I am now, and can we afford it?
Okay, then that's helpful discussion, I think. I'm going to follow on now to ask you to come back to see where you're going with that in about 6 months' time.
With regards, sorry, the management system?
Yeah.
Okay, that may be a bit premature. I'll come back to you if you want, but my understanding is it's not even envisaged for us to go on to SharePoint within this financial year. We're going to be one of the last to go on it. So I can't see me being back. Well, saying that, 6 months would be next April. That's the sort of time we're getting for. I can come back. Put it this way, I'm due to do a mid-year report. That'll probably been done now December. I wouldn't have thought I would be anywhere further than that. But I've got to do the mid-year report. I can comment on it then. But I would hope to have something in line with the plan.
That's fine. That's fine. David.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Jonathan. Just on the table in 5.2 6.7. It was just for my own awareness, really, in regard to particular blue badge and pensions. What sort of fraud are we looking at in that context, please?
So blue badge is it's a basically those blue badge, that figure is completely from blue badges which have not been cancelled following the death of a person. So for instance, somebody dies, it's the last thing probably on the family's mind to give the blue badge back. I think they're too busy looking at what should we do with the house, what should we do with the funeral. So the blue badge is sitting there. The blue badges, is there any evidence that that's been used fraudulently? Somebody's used it to go and park somewhere they shouldn't and avoid parking fees? I don't think so, but that's what the majority of those were. And again, the pensions one, they're overpayments that have been caused by us not being notified that somebody's been deceased in their pension, and pension payments have been continue to be paid.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. Just a compliment as well in regard to the joint working. I think what the chair was mentioning, you know, that's excellent work in regard to the cross organisational working. So compliments for that, really.
Thank you.
And then I think just in regard to future report, it might be an idea just to give us a bit of a case example, just from start to finish, just to see the type of case you're dealing with and the outcomes, really.
Yeah, well, I do annual training in December. Perhaps that's a better, I don't know if the chair agrees, perhaps that's a better area on which to do individual case studies, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't mind doing it, but I think that's probably a better area, in a more relaxed area.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Thank you.
If you can build that into the next training, then
yeah, no worries.
That'd be great. Okay, then, if we got no more questions, if we deal with agenda item number 6 first, that's for information. So if we can note that for information. Agenda item 7 is for the committee to review, discuss and approve the plan. So we need to take a vote on approving the plan. So do we have any specific comments, noting Jonathan's comments about what he's prioritising, the staff resource he's got, the anti-fraud risk assessment checklist he's completed? If there are no comments, then are we in a position to take a vote? Julie Davis, you've got a comment on this one?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Could I just check with Jonathan on pages 57 and 60 or 61 in the risk assessment section? You include the wording subject to the new resources being implemented for procurement and personal budgets for social care. Are you happy with the increase in establishment numbers by one, that you are in a position to be able to complete this work?
Jonathan? Jonathan, have you gone? Seems as if we've lost Jonathan. Okay, if we can hold back on those comments, I think the resource is something that we've always kept under review. I think they've gone from 2 to 3. That's a step forward, and there's a possibility of going 3 to 4 is what I've just heard Jonathan say. So with noting that fact, are we in a position to take a vote that we're happy to approve this report? So if we can, I can hand over to Jeremy.
Do the name vote?
Yeah, please.
Okay, it's recommended the committee review, discuss and approve the anti-fraud plan for 23-24 as at Appendix 3. You can give me a vote, please. Julie Davis.
4.
Councillor Adam Davis. Is he earlier? I think he's left. Okay. Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams. Councillor Alan Jeffrey.
4.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
4.
Councillor Mike Locke.
4.
Chair.
4.
Councillor Sam Pritchard. No, not there. David Roberts.
4.
Councillor Kelly Roberts. I don't think she's in. No. Councillor Leslie Walton
Or
and Councillor Mike White.
Or
Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you. So Jonathan, you dropped out for a short while, so we've taken the vote to approve your plan, recognising that what you're prioritising. Julie raised a couple of questions regarding resource and your ability to deliver the plan when you were dropped out. But what I've noted was your comments that you've gone from 2 to 3 with an opportunity of going from 3 to 4 at a future period of time, depending on how you go. I don't know if you want to add any more to that, Jonathan. You're on mute, Jonathan.
Sorry, Chair. Thanks very much. No, I got nothing further to add to that. Thank you for your comments.
Okay. Are we all happy with that? Julie, are you okay with that now?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Jonathan, for attending today, and good luck with your future workload. I mean, I'm sure we're all looking forward to the training session where we can have a little bit more knowledge around the case one. Okay, then, if we can move forward, we've got the Non-Jenkins next, Audit Wales Work Programme. Welcome, Non.
Now, thank you.
If you'd like to go through.
Yes, thank you very much, Diolch yn fawr. I've just popped in from another meeting and going to another one. Thankfully, we're still in hybrid, so that helps with workload. So thank you for that, and thanks for your patience. So this is, as usual, as you know, you've seen these a number of times now. On page 79 of your pack is the quarterly update, so quarter 1 for the current year, giving you an update as to where we are on our audit work, and also includes CIW and Eston work too further on, but I won't go through those. Gillian sent her apologies for today, but the first page there is as it is. They've completed last year's accounts work and awaiting to start. They've completed the 21-22 accounts work and awaiting to start the 22-23 work when they get those. For the performance audit work, we're near completion now on the 21-22 performance work, as you can see, and we've sent through the financial position update since last time, so that you've had those, and a number of the reports are with council, or a few of the reports are with council at the moment for clearance for the 22-23 also. So we've started motoring, I suppose, so hopefully we're hoping to finish all of the work across Wales for 22-23 around about September and October. So then we'll be able to start the 23-24 work in earnest from then on. We have brought, as you know, the 23-24 outline audit plan to you, but we'll bring the detailed audit plan in due course once we've managed to plan everything our end after the work has been undertaken. And then from page 85, I think you're 85 onwards, then it just goes through all of the work that we've ongoing in terms of national studies. And whenever we complete anything, as you can see, we try and put the link to that work in there so that you can use this as a go-to to click back and access anything. Everything that we publish is on our website anyway, so you feel free to have a look at the website for anything at any time anyway. But when we send them through, we let your officers know when they send them out in a timely way. So just about any questions, happy to take.
Thank you, Non. And I minded you're busy, so perhaps we can limit the questions. Are there any questions for Non? No. I've got a couple of questions. So on page 4 of your report, page 82 of the pack, you've got 2 reports on that page and 2 on the following page where you drafted an issue to the council. One is the springing forward examination of sustainable future, achieving better together, use of performance information, and setting of well-being objectives. Being as you're at the stage of drafting or just issued a draft, are there any headliners that you need to alert the Governance and Audit Committee about?
So we wouldn't at this stage discuss those in any public forum, because the whole purpose of a clearance period that we do across with all our audited bodies, as you would expect, is for factual accuracy. So we are clearing our reports. Once we share them with the council, the drafts with the council, we clear it for factual accuracy before we issue it for final. So just to let you know that we have got to that stage. It's in train, so you will get them in due course, and make sure that they're factually accurate. In certain instances, we correct the factual accuracies, and that might actually change some of the messages. So that's why we don't say anything publicly until we've cleared everything for factual accuracy.
I understand that. Are you able to give any timeline when these reports will be cleared?
Yeah, in the so the 22-23 ones, you should get them. Well, hopefully you'll get nearly all of them by the next commit. Well, by after the summer. So when you come back after the summer, you'll definitely have the 22-23 outstanding performance information work and the wellbeing objectives work. And obviously the thematic reviews are across Wales, so I can't tell you exactly when they'll be finished, but we're aiming to finish those by the end of September, because we want to pull a national summary together as soon as possible after that. So yeah, there should be a few reports coming through to you soon.
Okay, thank you. I mean, this report is of a real value because it's got the links, as you quite rightly say, to the reports you've issued, and there's lots of richness of information that will give the Governance and Audit Committee members assurance in many areas. Can I ask one final question for you? Is you've had difficulties with your staffing and recruitment process. Is that settling down now? Has it improved?
Yeah, so in terms of resourcing, I'm here today because some people are off. But yes, so we're recruiting at the moment to sort out some of the pressures in that sense. So yes,
it has improved.
Everything's in hand in that sense. So yes, so hopefully by September we'll all be in a better position. So you will have your reports and we'll have full complement of staff. So yes.
Okay, that's good news then. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm not seeing any hands up. Thank you for calling in to the meeting today, and I'm happy for you to remove yourself now, but thank you, Nan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
nice to see you. Bye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Governance and Audit Committee Tracker Report. Just bear with me on that one. Obviously, this document is important as well to make sure that we have any information that we've requested in a timely fashion. If I can just pick up, there's one item on there around fleet maintenance report. We asked the head of highways and transport for an indication of the number of electric vehicles that the council had procured, and if there'd been any evaluation of savings in any shape or form. I've had a correspondence from Mark Barrow, which indicates that there's no financial savings because the vehicles are that more expensive. I've gone back to him on that because clearly it's got an environmental saving of a kind. So I've gone back to him. I've also asked for, if they've got no financial value, if they can provide us with a request for total mileage against each of the vehicles to make sure that those vehicles are being used to achieve the best benefits to the environment and to the financial position of the council. I'm still waiting for that information, but I just wanted to give you that update because the comment is in the tracker as ongoing. But that's a recent piece of information I've gleaned. Is there anything else on the tracker that anybody wishes to pick up? David.
Thanks, Chair. Just on that same item, really. Yes, it's handy to have the number of vehicles and maybe the shift from diesel, petrol to electrification. There is a capital cost, obviously, with any new vehicle, but there's also a depreciation in value as well in regard to that. But in regard to your comment about looking at the detail, we were looking very particularly about fuel efficiencies, the carbon offsetting, but also maintenance as well, because maintenance was quite high on the previous report. And obviously these vehicles require less maintenance than the traditional petrol diesel vehicle. So I think it's a bit more detail in that report really about the efficiencies, not just the cost of the individual vehicles, but around that vehicle, what the efficiencies are. So thanks.
Totally agree. So that comment's gone back to Mark Barrow, and it may take him a little while to get the information. I think there's 80 vehicles. I'm assuming you'll have to get the mileometer reading off the 80 vehicles. So it's probably a day trip for someone to track them all down. But I think it's important that we pick it up from the environmental part of it and for the value for money and economy and efficiency, etc.
Chair, if I can
Yes,
just raise a point about that, on a question of savings, if you're talking in terms of maintenance costs, I wonder, is there any kind of incentive that's given to the operators or drivers to sort of look after these vehicles? Because I see them sort of abused very often, particularly the trucks as such. And I mean, there could be savings there in terms of maintenance costs. And if there was a kind of incentive given to the drivers in some way or other, a remuneration or even a gift of some description, that just mainly for just looking after the vehicles, particularly if they are vehicles where the drivers or operators may claim ownership to it in some way or form. It's just a thought or something that could be looked at. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think Simon has agreed to include another review of fleet within his audit programme, Nick, if you can pick that up, and particularly if you can pick up the comments that I've had back from Mark and the comments that have been raised in the meeting today, Nick, to make sure that when we do get that internal audit review, it's covering all aspects of what we've been asking and seeking for. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Yes, I totally agree. It's useful to have more detail, and it gives this committee better assurance. But I do think we've got to be very careful not to forget the reason for buying those vehicles and the importance of the environmental aspects. And sometimes it might not be a monetary value that you can actually quantify. So as long as when we get that detail, we don't just hone in, oh, has it saved us money? Because the issue is far broader than that, I feel.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely agree with you. And it's in the absence of the financial elements to the savings, that's why I want to know the mileage to see what the environmental aspect of it can be. David.
Yeah, just to pick up on Councillor Walton's point, I think there is a formula in doing the carbon offsetting. I know we see it with the major airlines and major corporations. So I think there would be a way of actually calculating that per vehicle or the fleet in total, really, just to enhance that approach, really.
Yeah, totally agree. Are there any other comments on the tracker? So if those comments can be taken back, Nick, to Simon, and also Jeremy to Mark, so we can get that back in the future. I think our final item on the agenda is the Governance and Audit Committee work programme. Again, we keep this under regular review to make sure that it's fit for purpose and it delivers against our terms of reference. I've had a quick look at it before the meeting today, and I think it's got everything in there at the moment that we need across the periods of the next municipal year. And noting we've got no meeting in August. So being as that's the last item on the agenda, and if there are no, Nick.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just to go back to the fleet maintenance. Yeah, I spoke to Simon. We've added the notes to the audit scope for fleet maintenance. So once we actually sit down now and any further discussions around carbon savings and so on, we can build that into the testing. So the note is there ready for us to pick up on it, and if anything further comes out of these discussions, then other areas that we can look at, maybe maintenance and so on, we'll add all that in, and we can report back on that.
That's great. Thank you, Nick. So coming back to the work programme, if there's, I'm not seeing anything additional we need to put in at this moment in time, but this belongs to the whole of the committee. So if any members spot anything, then please let Jeremy or myself know.
Yeah, just one comment, Chair. There's quite a lot on the agenda for September. I did include the statement of accounts there, so that's obviously dependent upon Audit Wales, and so that may move, so just be aware of that as well.
Okay. But as I started to say, there is no meeting in August. The council tries to keep diaries clear in August. So if I can wish everybody a happy holiday time, and I'll see you all in September, and thank you again for your attendance and your participation today. I do value it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. There's training session September is fine.